Hi, welcome back to another Getting Together podcast broadcast. You can find us on YouTube, all the social media places.
All of them.
What'd you say?
All of them. Just all
of them.
Eventually.
So we are here at the porch, one of our favorite places to be, and I've got my porch swing again this morning, Jeremy.
Hey, all right.
Uh-huh.
Is it just as delicious as last time?
It's so good. You've got to come down. You got to try one. Say hi to Lisa. Say hi to Jesse. We love that they help us out and let us record here on Mondays, 10 a.m., and this is my co-host. You know him and his mustache. It's Jeremy Brinkerhoff.
Good morning, everyone.
Myself, Raylene Challinor. Either one works. And today we have Sherrie Wethey with us. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Lovely. Welcome to the Getting Together podcast. Thank you for getting together with us.
You bet.
Excellent.
We're so thankful that you're here.
We are.
So the reason we asked Sherrie to be here with us this morning is we want to talk about what she does here in Prescott. But first, we're going to start off with who she is. So tell us a little bit about Sherrie Wethey.
Well, I've been a pediatric occupational therapist for over 30 years.
Wow, say that
I've been
5
doing
times
this
fast.
a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have.
You know, when I was a kid, I just always knew that I wanted to work in pediatrics in some capacity.
Okay.
Even as a kid?
Even as a kid. I think I was about 9, 10 years old. I saw a program, TV show on a therapist working with a child with autism. And I thought, that's what I want to do.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And then also back then, our neighbor adopted a child from Korea. And I thought, I want to do that one day.
Oh, my
Wow.
word. Did you
So-
know at 9 or 10 what you wanted to do?
No. I knew I shouldn't pick my nose.
Right.
That was about the whole
Well,
of it.
and get caught.
Well, right.
Right.
Yeah. So, no,
Wow,
at
that's
9 or 10,
impressive.
that's awesome.
So
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of more of a calling.
It
It's
is
just
a
kind of
calling.
where
That's
I was,
incredible.
what I was supposed to do. I guess.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
in high school, I took the that little inventory. You know, they had one computer on campus that was this big. And
Oh, yeah.
To, you know, what are my interests and things like that.
Your aptitude kind of thing.
Therapy came up, and occupational therapy came up, and I was like, didn't know what that was. You know,
Yeah.
do you teach children how to work?
Right.
I mean, I didn't know
Yes.
what you
Yeah.
know. And so looked into it, and occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy all kind of came up on the screen, and I kind of looked at all of them, looked at the coursework I'd have to take when I went to college, and OT fit me the best. You
Okay.
can kind of really be creative with it, and basically help kids be the best they can be in
Yeah.
every area of life.
And so for those of us who
Neat.
still don't know what occupational therapy is, and it
Sure.
sounds like kids need jobs,
does.
what is that thing? What is
Yeah,
occupational
So
therapy, and what does that entail?
Physical therapy kind of works with, kind of big motor
Large
groups, right?
Okay, yeah.
Crawling, walking, balance, coordination,
Sure.
that kind of thing. Speech therapy, of course, works on speech and language and feeding.
Yes.
Well, everything else is for OT. Okay, so every other part of that child is kind of up to us.
Oh, wow.
So we work on sensory processing skills. We work on visual perceptual skills. We work on self-regulation.
Yes.
We do work on upper extremity strength, coordination, handwriting.
Hands, yeah.
Okay.
Of course, daily living skills, being able to dress
Yes.
themselves, brush your teeth, take a shower, do all those
Habitation,
things.
yeah.
Okay.
So basically, the whole child.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Look
Okay.
at the whole
Really good.
child. And recently have kind of gone more into the world of trauma. So children who
Okay.
have been through trauma and abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, autism is rampant.
Sure.
And it's, when I started over 30 years ago, I had maybe a couple on my caseload. Now I have a lot on my caseload.
Because
Okay.
I was actually shocked when you said you saw a TV show, I think, of a woman working with a child with autism when you were younger. I don't remember autism being spoken at all until I was in college, I think.
Yeah, I think
And
that
then
they
it
kind
was
of
like,
grouped it all
oh, that's what was up with him or
into
her, you
just
know?
like a, delayed, but not a real specific category.
Okay.
But when I started, I maybe had 2 kids with autism on my caseload. But it's truly not just that we're diagnosing more. It's an epidemic.
Oh.
Okay.
It's an epidemic.
Wow.
And it's every year, more and more kids are born with autism. And so a lot of research behind that. I don't know all the ins and outs of that,
Yeah.
but what I've read, it seems to be the toxins in the air, you know, and the fertilizer and the things that they use in our, you know, that goes into the ground, and then we eat that.
Okay.
And then the toxins go up in the air, and then it rains on us.
Yeah.
Just they're higher
Sort of like saturated in it
predominance
from what we-
of autism in certain parts of the country where pollution is higher. So I don't know all of the ins and outs of why, but I do know that it's definitely on the rise, and not just kids who are autistic, but kids who are on the spectrum as far as sensory processing issues.
Right.
Okay. So how kids, you know, interpret what they see, you know, feel, hear, how they interpret in their internal bodies.
Yeah.
And so that can affect every area of life,
Sure.
and it's huge. And so, it's a big job. And so you
That is a big
evaluate
job.
and prioritize goals.
Yeah.
And let me back up just a little bit and go back to my history before I get into the whole work piece, because this kind of all goes hand in hand.
It really
And so
does.
I always knew that I wanted to adopt a child, and so tried a couple of times, had some foster kids. I grew up in Minnesota, moved here in 1995, and we had this little girl who was a foster child, and she had just turned 4, brought her here. You know, had not hooked up with the church, didn't have family here, didn't have a real support system. Probably not the best time to take on a child.
That's a big.
I had 2 little boys at the time, and my bio children. And so took this little girl in, and she had severe trauma, but we were not told back history. We weren't told anything. Took this kiddo in, and you know, tried to kill my dog.
Yeah.
You know, just at one point in time, she just turned 4, got my car keys out of my purse, tried to start the car at 5 a.m. and tried to leave.
Oh my
A
word.
4-year-old.
A lot of mental
Yes.
health issues,
Wow.
a lot of, a lot of stuff going on. And I didn't feel prepared, even though I was in the field, not necessarily in the field of trauma at that time, but
Right.
Yeah.
so I just didn't feel like I could provide her what she needed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
That's a higher level.
my boys, she tormented them. I mean, I don't know how
Yeah.
at 3 and 4, but they can do that.
Oh, yes.
That's part of the stuff.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so it's just
Survival.
really hard on the family and my family. And so it disrupted that, chose not to adopt her. And I thought, okay, I guess that's just not supposed to happen for me in my life. And so just kind of let that go.
Yeah.
And then I worked at the Foundation for Blind Children in Phoenix for over 10 years. And I saw a news story before I went and work one day. And there's a set of quadruplets born in Avondale. And they were all severely abused.
Yeah.
And I walked into the clinic, and foster mom came in with 2 of those babies. They were 6 months old at the time.
Wow.
And so Hannah became one of my patients, as did her brother, who was severely impaired. Blind, deaf, tube fed, all
my
those
goodness.
things. Hannah had shaken baby syndrome, was severely shaken. She was at the Foundation for Blind Children because they thought that she was going to lose her vision.
Yeah.
She didn't completely lose her vision. She is legally blind.
Okay.
But that program wasn't the best for her. She was a little bit higher functioning than some of the kids there. So
Yeah.
anyway, so I was her therapist for about 3 months, and
that story made national headlines.
It did.
Is that correct?
It's like
It
one
did.
of the
It was-
most major severe cases of abuse.
And see, the thing is
in
most
Arizona.
of those mamas, are not convicted.
Wow, yeah.
So that did go to trial,
Okay.
and she was convicted and got 172 years without parole.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so we waited until that was all said and done, and then we chose to adopt.
Wow.
And so Hannah's 2 brothers are adopted by another family in the East
Okay.
Valley. Brandon, who was the most severely impaired, was adopted by the nurse at the Foundation for Blind Children.
Wow.
And then I took in Hannah.
That's cool.
And so Hannah was she had a stroke, a lot of damage on the right side of her brain. So she couldn't use
Okay.
her left arm. She was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Both of her legs would just be like stiff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she couldn't move real well, couldn't crawl. And she had a cranial cap to reshape her skull because there were
Okay.
so many skull fractures.
Oh my goodness.
And so I chose to adopt.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so she came let's see, her first overnight, she was 12 months old. And then she moved in at 15 months. It was right around Easter weekend, so it was really
Okay.
special.
Yeah.
So
That is cool.
my boys, at the time, my bio boys were 10 and 13. And
Those are
I
good
thought,
ages.
don't know about starting over.
I know. I
kind of let that dream go, and then here I am in this situation.
Oh, yes.
And that foster mama looked at me, wonderful lady, and she said, I told her about my other stories, and she said, are you sure this isn't the one you're supposed to have?
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was it. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, this is the one.
Yeah.
And so we took her in, and she had occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy,
All the things.
all the therapies,
Whole thing.
and we still kept in touch, with brothers and
Yeah,
things.
that's nice.
And every month we try to get together and do things. And so Hannah, went to developmental preschool, but I tell you what, by the time she was 6 years old, she was able to use her left hand. She's left-handed, writes beautifully.
Wow, that's
Wow.
awesome.
And news footage continued to cover the story because it was a big nationwide
yes.
news story.
Very big.
And so they followed us to kindergarten.
Oh my goodness.
Cameras.
Oh my
goodness.
And here she is doing the monkey bars with her left, right,
that's
and
awesome.
smiling and very interactive and social and
Yes.
beautiful, beautiful little girl. And she came a long, long way.
That's incredible.
So she currently is 23 years old. She has 3 kiddos under 3,
Wow.
three babies under 3. Married to a wonderful, wonderful
awesome.
man.
That's
And
that's
she's
amazing.
doing well. She's getting her master's degree in public health.
Oh wow.
so
And so she
great.
wants to give back into the
Yes.
community
Oh,
at some
my
point.
goodness.
And a little
Oh,
backstory on
Sherrie.
some of that was that Brandon, her brother, passed away a couple of years ago from the injuries
Okay.
from when he was newborn.
Okay.
Hurts
And
my heart.
that was hard. And
He was the one that was adopted by the nurse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And so he passed away. But then what happened was Mom was let out of jail. So somehow someone came up with a conflict of interest between judge and lawyer.
Oh, my
And so it had
word.
nothing to do with the case, had nothing to do if she was guilty or not. And they let her out of jail.
Oh,
And so
my
then
gosh.
the kids, the quads had to kind of relive some of that stuff
Yes.
No
and
doubt.
process all of that. Like, what happened to us? That didn't really matter.
Right.
And then, of course, and they never really talked about it, about themselves, but more about what birth mom did to Brandon.
Yeah, sure.
And that, so that was hard.
And do the 3 remaining siblings, do they have interaction with each other?
Yeah.
Do they have a good
Yes, they
relationship?
do.
Okay.
Oh, that's
So
so nice.
one of them lives in Flagstaff, and the other one is very active in his church and
Okay.
wants to be a pastor.
Oh, wow.
And then Hannah. But yeah, they do communicate still.
That's good.
And keep in touch, and that's good. So
Yeah. That's
anyway,
cool.
that's that backstory. So I kind of lived a little bit of. I didn't do as much foster care as you have,
Yes,
but
I've done a lot.
I had a few kiddos that came in, and I don't know. That was a lot of years ago that I did this, and
Yeah.
hopefully things have changed a little bit. But it's kind of. I think that people that are going to do foster care and adoption need a little better education on what they're getting into.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that I've learned in the last 6 years since I've moved up to Prescott and been in the clinic where I work now, that we really specialize in working with kids who've been through trauma.
Yes.
Okay.
And so that's why we get a lot of referrals from around to work with these kiddos who've been, severely beaten and traumatized
Yeah,
and all those kinds of
neglected.
things.
Yeah.
And so
Didn't get the prenatal
right.
care. I mean, all kinds
All of
of
it,
Yeah.
all of it adds up. It all adds up. Little
It really
traumas, a
does.
big trauma, it all adds up.
Yeah.
And so Hannah graduated high school, and then my husband and I, he's a retired psychologist, we decided to move to Prescott.
Yes.
And so we came here, and I interviewed at Kid Abilities, and I went into interview and didn't really know what they had to offer, but I was pleasantly surprised that they are using a cutting-edge treatment technique to work with kids who've been through trauma and
So
abuse.
tell us
And
about
it's
that.
EEG Neurofeedback.
EEG.
Gee, okay.
EEG Neurofeedback.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we have 5 leads or sensors, okay, that are hooked to the ears and the scalp, and that is hooked up to our computer that basically reads where the electricity is in the brain.
Okay.
And so then the kiddos listen to music. And what happens is every time the brain is being inefficient in some way, oftentimes they're kids who've been through trauma. Basically, it's PTSD.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, it is.
And so what happens, it's actually this EEG neurofeedback started with veterans with PTSD.
Okay.
And so the owner of our practice decided to put it into place in our pediatric population with these kids.
Yeah.
And so with PTSD, what happens is the brain oftentimes goes to, I call the basement brain, the limbic system.
Yep.
Okay. Because that's where they were for survival. Right.
Okay.
And so they may have been taken out or removed from that awful situation, and they're in maybe a lovely foster adoptive home.
It doesn't matter.
Very cared for, very loved. Guess what?
All this stuff.
They're still
All
there.
there.
They're still in their basement brain. They're still in their limbic system.
Yes.
So can you imagine living in fight, flight, freeze
All the time.
Constantly.
24/7?
All the time.
Wow.
It's tough. It's tough. So
It's exhausting.
anxiety
Yeah.
through the roof,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So triggers all over the place.
All
You don't know what's
over.
going to trigger them. It
Yep.
could be the weather. It could be a smell.
Burnt toast,
It could
yep.
be anything. Okay.
Burnt toast.
So every time that the electricity goes from upstairs brain, I call it, I teach the kids about their brain so that they can
Nice.
learn what is
Awesome.
going on and why we're doing this, right?
Yes.
And so every time the cortical activity goes from frontal lobe, upstairs brain, to limbic system, now they're sitting in my chair, they're comfortable, okay,
Nice.
they're safe,
Yeah.
and yet, they're in limbic system, they don't need to be there, right?
No.
And so the music stops briefly. That is the cue. Cortical activity, the electricity goes back up to frontal lobe where it needs to be to learn, to focus, to pay attention.
Retrains.
It retrains the brain
Ugh.
waves. I don't know. That's about as simple as I can
Yeah.
Yeah.
explain it. And it's an incredible thing.
And is there a type
Yeah.
of music, or is there a specific kind of music that
Oh, that's a
really
good
works
question.
better
Yeah.
than others, or what are you guys finding
You
there?
can pretty much, I think, use any kind of music, but we just use what came with our program. We use the Zengar program, and they have it already pre-done for us.
Okay.
And I kind of call it like a little new agey sort of music, just kind of
Massage
there's
therapy music.
Yes, exactly.
Elevator.
Exactly. With a little bit of like nature,
Yeah.
waterfall and
Okay.
stuff kind of thrown in there. So it's kind of relaxing music, okay?
I gotcha.
But it's really more about the music stopping.
Okay.
That's
Your
the
brain
cue.
going, wait a minute.
And, right, and the brain wants to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the brain is made to do.
Yeah.
And so
It's amazing.
it's not just also when the brain goes from upstairs to downstairs brain, it can be, I can see on my screen where the electricity is, okay, in what part of the brain. And I'm
wow.
telling you, some of these
Isn't that
kids
cool?
come in and
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
it's very chaotic and disorganized.
Oh,
okay?
yes.
Brain's doing the best it can.
Right.
But when brain can take that cue and become more efficient,
Yeah.
we see incredible results with our kids.
Wow.
We see central nervous systems calm down.
Oh, how
and
wonderful.
then they are able to participate in the self-regulation training that we do, teach them calm down techniques, teach them to identify their emotions, give them an emotional language to be able to communicate with their families how they're feeling.
Yes.
And I teach my kids, you stuff your feelings and don't talk about them.
Yeah.
What's going to happen is you're going to get physically sick. That's what happens. That's what happens. And so we need to pull some of that out from these kiddos. And so
Yes.
give them the language first off. We teach them that. And then we teach them self-regulation techniques, calm down techniques. We teach, of course, the parents as well.
Yes.
Now, the goal
a biggie.
of the therapist, the owner of the practice, she had debilitating anxiety herself. And so she did the EEG Neurofeedback, and it changed her life. And so
Wow.
that's why she decided to step out on a limb. Let's try this
Yeah.
in this setting.
Yes.
No one else has done that, I don't think, across the
Yeah.
country yet, quite frankly. And so the way that we do it, it's very, very expensive. If you wanted to go somewhere and get EEG Neurofeedback, you can do that. You can go, there's no therapy that goes along with it, though. And it's very, very, very expensive.
Okay.
And so we bill for occupational therapy services, but we don't bill for the EEG neurofeedback. It's just a modality
Yeah.
that we do.
Yes.
Insurance companies
So
haven't
grateful.
quite caught up with the research and will not pay for that
Yeah.
service.
That's
So when
huge.
we do it combined with occupational therapy services, it's magic.
Yes.
It's magic. And so
Yes.
the families, we would love to at some point in time come up with some funds to be able to do EEG neurofeedback with the mamas and the dads that come in.
yeah.
Because guess what? If we have a kiddo coming in with severe anxiety, mom and dad have got that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
So that's kind of a long-term goal
Oh,
to
yeah.
get
That
some
would be
grants
so
or that kind of a
great.
thing.
Yes.
But the owner of our practice is pretty selfless in that she's willing
yeah.
to purchase all of these very expensive computers and add this into what we do and not bill for it.
Oh my gosh.
So it's an
what
amazing
a gift.
service that we have to offer.
Yeah.
All
What
of
a
it.
gift.
Maybe this is kind of how I see this thing working. Just correct me where I'm
Sure.
in error. But
Okay.
so like the music's going, it's almost like musical chairs, but with like memories and feelings and things
Right,
like that. So
right.
the music stops, and the idea is that everyone now organizes and gets in their
Where they're
individually
supposed to
assigned
be.
seat, and then you're able to kind of
Good.
instruct and give that. Is that,
Woo,
is
I
that
like
sort
that.
of-
Good way to put that, Jeremy.
Good
Yeah.
analogy.
Yeah.
Good analogy.
So that's
Good
the that's
word
the that's
picture
the
there.
desire is to
Exactly.
organize all that chaos, but
Absolutely
it's triggered by
right.
by the stopping
So
of the music.
we used to have
That's
the
good.
program used to give us a before and after number, and what that number was how much electricity, how many amps of electricity was going off in the brain in any given moment. Okay,
Good
it used to be
grief.
able to do that. It's incredible. But and so what the goal was always, let's say the number was 1500 starting. Okay, and you look at the screen and boy, that kid's electricity is going everywhere. And the goal is to, by the end of the session, have that number go down by half. And
Wow.
consistently that would happen.
Wow.
Now, they've taken away the number system, and I think partly because families and patients coming in, they were so bent on,
You
what's
could
the
get
number?
anxious about
What's
that.
the number?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Oh, yeah.
we don't
Exactly.
have that anymore, but I had that experience over the first few years when we were there. And
Yeah.
so you could see it. You could watch it happen and see that number
Wow.
change.
That's incredible.
So, but we see, so what we count on is the families letting us know in what shifts has that kiddo
Right.
made
The
in their
behaviors,
life. Decreased meltdowns.
right.
Improved focus.
Yeah.
Improved ability to interact with peers and siblings.
Yes.
All of those, once you calm down that central nervous system, good things can happen. And it's sometimes it takes a little bit, and these kids get uncomfortable when they're in that calm
Well,
place.
yeah, 'cause
You
they've
can see
never
them
felt
kinda
it before.
fidget
Oh, yeah.
in their chair.
That's
like, this
new.
Is
If
different.
you're always
This feels
your
weird.
cortisol levels are
Yes.
always high, and all of a sudden this feels weird. This is foreign. I mean, I
Exactly.
think we've kind of mentioned this maybe with the getting together community.
Yeah.
But I, have 2 adopted children, and I always focused on my son who has fetal alcohol,
Right.
and then sensory, and a lot of similar things on the autism spectrum,
right.
but has never been diagnosed with that. Always focusing on him and behaviors and, all those things. And now I'm realizing, my daughter has some of these things too, more on the anxiety kind of.
A little more subtle, maybe.
Yeah, a little more subtle, but as school is amping up and we're starting to see more like, finger pulling
OCD
and
kind of behaviors.
Yes, and has to say goodbye every morning the same way and some of those things. We just discovered kid abilities, and now I want to shout it from the rooftops. So we've gone through the process to get my son in and evaluated, and these are the things that just excite me because he has come a long way as well, just like your daughter. I
Right.
mean, without our physical and OT therapists and speech therapists, they told us that he wouldn't walk.
Right.
They were pretty sure.
Right.
And just kind of preparing
Right.
us, like
Sure.
he may not
Sure.
walk. This boy is boulder
Everywhere.
climbing at Watson Lake. He's doing all the
incredible.
things. And
It's
it's
incredible.
because of our therapies.
Right.
And so
It's
now this
important.
next step just gets me so excited.
Let's go a little
good.
deeper. Go a little deeper into the nervous
it just
system.
gets me
Yeah.
so excited for him.
Right. And
yeah.
I think I'm
And
in this
her.
field. And you think I would have known some of this, but I didn't do real specific research in this area. But, kiddos in utero.
Yes.
If they're in a situation and that mama has high cortisol levels because maybe
Yes.
she's in an abusive relationship or
just
whatever the
surviving.
situation might
Yeah.
be, that transfers to those babies.
Yes.
So that
yeah.
that child can come out
Oh,
and
absolutely.
be handed to a wonderful, lovely adoptive mama and daddy. But guess what?
Yes.
Things are already wired
Trauma.
up
Already
Trauma.
wired up there. Yeah, we got our
Rewired.
daughter at 3 days old.
Trauma rewires your brain.
Yeah.
And so we're trying
Man.
to
Yes.
get that
Bring
a
it
little
back.
bit, get that brain back
Yeah.
in a more
Yeah.
functional, efficient way.
Yeah.
It's
So
really
we
good.
have testimony after testimony. Of course,
Yeah.
people come in and I'm like, I can't guarantee anything.
Sure, right.
But from what I've seen in the last 6 years that I've been here and I've done this work,
Yeah.
I've never seen the progress like I have seen using this tool in addition to everything else that we do. I wouldn't just want to hook up a kid and say, here you go, that's going to fix you. But in addition to everything else that we do, providing a safe environment, giving them the tools that they need to live a successful life.
And teaching the parents
and
as well.
Teaching the parents. And a lot of these
so we don't
parents
undo
come in,
it at home.
Well, and the thing is, too, is parents... they'll come in and they'll be like, they think that they're going a little crazy because it's like, I've parented other kids, maybe I've had bio kids, and I don't understand I don't understand what's going on here. And they feel like a little out of control themselves, right?
No doubt.
And so to teach them about the effects of developmental trauma, and there's a long list of issues that can come up from that.
Yeah.
And lots of studies. Actually, that term isn't even in the DSM yet. It's not even we don't have a code for that, bill for that yet, but it's developmental trauma is OCD behaviors, anxiety, oppositional defiant disorder, all of the autism. Kids with trauma who've experienced trauma are often diagnosed with autism because some of the behaviors mimic that.
Right.
Oh, it's like sort of like a misdiagnosis.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the umbrella term for all of that is developmental trauma. And guess what? This is just kind of new in the last several years. And so we're learning
I was gonna
more
say,
and more.
it's been...
And so my daughter too, and we had this conversation, and so her brain was rewired, and then she was shaken and beaten. Okay, so she got all kinds of things. But the fact that her 3 little girls, it's passed down.
Yeah.
It can be passed down. Just the wiring of the brain, right?
Sure.
And so it's far-reaching.
Oh, it's fascinating.
And it can be great-grandpa had trauma back when, and then that was passed down. And so it's interesting. It's fascinating to read about all of this, but it's also kind of frightening.
It is.
Right.
But the cycle can be stopped.
There we go.
That's the positive note. It can be stopped. You can retrain the brain. You can make new neural pathways. That's what I hold on to. Because I know fetal alcohol is lifelong debilitating. You never cure, if that's the right word. But
it depends
can
on
learn
when
the
the child,
function.
when the alcohol was used and what stage of the pregnancy. But what I have found from being a therapist for so many years too is it's almost... There can be more challenging behaviors with that, with the fetal alcohol than even, a crack baby or meth baby or whatever. The alcohol really messes up the structure of the brain. Yeah. And so, God bless you. It's a tough one. Yeah. It's a tough one.
We've come a long way. Yeah. And now with Sherrie and Kid Abilities, and lots of prayer, I'm very excited.
And
that's good.
Part of the reason that I'm here was I reached out to Ray because pre-COVID, we had a waiting list at Kid Abilities.
I wanted to get in.
25 kids.
And I was
always
like,
had a waiting list.
Forget it.
After COVID, I think what's happened, I don't know for sure, but families are not getting their kiddos into the pediatrician's office to get the referrals. Maybe the psychologists aren't seeing the kids as much. They're not giving us the referrals. We are actually low on numbers to be able to maintain all the we have 6 therapists that we have. And I know the kids are out there. Yes. And then post-COVID, guess what? Anxiety is higher.
Off the charts.
So I know that we have some things to offer that could help, a lot of kiddos. And so I want to get the word out that Raylene had never gone there because she heard,
I thought you had a waiting list. Yeah.
You wasn't be able to get in. Well, that's not the case. So I just want to get the word out there.
Okay.
And it's a really wonderful, supportive environment there. Yeah. We all love what we do.
It's very
cozy.
An
incredible place. I love it. I love every day there.
Awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I really appreciate the approach that you guys are taking, that it's not just about the kids, but then looking at the parents and saying, hey,
that's
look,
from the owner down. Yes.
You've endured things, and we're going to address those as well. So it's that holistic family approach that has to be in place if there's going to be lasting healing for everybody.
Yes, because every time, our little guy starts to trigger and go,
oh, man.
It causes me even though, it's 12 years of this, I still go, you take that deep breath, here we go.
So avoid the meltdown. Yes. And then sometimes that's not, you don't know what approach to use with that.
Or you don't know what's causing it.
And so,
so that's just great.
Self-regulation, mamas, daddies, and the kids.
Yeah.
And it's
so
really,
great.
really, really important stuff.
Sherrie, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're very
I think
welcome.
your message is an important one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I would say especially that thing of coming out of COVID, the number of people that we've seen personally and in our church and other places that being isolated, having to be at home, online, away from friends, away from structure, all those things, man, we're really starting to see this balloon of all kinds of different areas. And so like it is coming, but like Sherrie said, man, there are resources available. There are people that are willing to help. And there has been so much. I've even seen just an increase. Even as we've talked about it in church, it used to be such a taboo topic to mental health and stuff like that. But it's coming so far to the forefront now that people are talking openly about it. And there's a lot more of just really being able to ask, hey, I need help. And to find those resources, which is great. Really important. So I mean, there's no reason to keep it in the dark.
We're seeing kids that are gifted, which I've never treated before, but guess what? Boy, they think at kind of adult levels, and guess where their anxiety is. So all kinds of different typical kiddos that just have generalized anxiety. So it's not just the severely
it's not just our special need kiddos. No.
And so any form of anxiety we can help.
Would benefit.
That's awesome.
Kid abilities.
That's really good to know.
They can Google that here in Prescott.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I love it. Well, thank you, Sherrie. Appreciate your time and what you do.
Absolutely.
I'm a big fan.
Thank you, Ray.
So then that's it for today from us, from the Getting Together podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. And as Jeremy would say, we want you to share and like and subscribe and all the things. So,
until your fingers bleed. I think that's going to be a standing thing. Yeah. Until your fingers bleed.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So until next time, goodbye from me, Raylene, from Sherrie. Thank you again. From Jeremy and his mustache.
Yes. Goodbye.
We appreciate you. Bye-bye.